Hi, I'm Paul Carr,
And I'm Sarah Lacy.
and welcome to another, I was going to say transatlantic, but it's not. It's sort of transcontinental. Why is this news? Sarah, you're in rainy Manhattan, right?
I am in rainy Manhattan, which is
Hence
why I'm wearing a hat.
it's
So
the
that's the
hat.
thing. Once the hat goes on, you're kind of stuck with it the whole day.
No, it's a good hat, though. If you're going to be stuck with a hat, that's the hat to be stuck with. So, what have you discovered in Manhattan? I always worry about doing New York. Why is this news? Is because it's a bit like you've said before. It's a bit like me in Europe. There's always this sort of like we're going to say something mean about how they're not Silicon Valley. So we're not going to talk about that today. What are we going to say? What's
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because the point is, like, obviously they're not Silicon Valley. I mean, Silicon Valley took decades and decades, and I think what we're seeing right now in New York is, indeed very real, and it's sort of the most traction from a startup point of view that New York has seen. But it's very different. So I'm actually doing this call from Foursquare and Curved and Hard Candy's offices. So I'm in the vortex of new media.
what is hard candy? I know what Foursquare and Curved are, but
So they're a design firm.
oh, okay,
In fact, they've done some stuff for some of the AOL properties and done some stuff for Pick Please. I don't know if any of this is supposed to be public, but it is now.
whatever. Okay, so yeah, so the big thing you just said then is this is the first time that New York feels like it's got a sort of critical mass. Like we're not going. It isn't just another question of like, oh, they're trying, but they're not there. You're picking up a sort of sense that they're getting somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, but what's interesting, I mean, we all know that like Foursquare is legitimately an exciting company,
Yeah.
and there's certainly on the media side, I mean, Gawker is kind of the last standing independent blog network that's incredibly valuable. I mean, I think there's a lot of things you can point to that are, very real and encouraging. But I think what's interesting to me, so I've been doing a lot of like press for my book. So I've been in like sort of the old media circle. My husband is an
I love
artist
that
who's been
circle.
here. We've been hanging out with a bunch of people in the art and design scene, and other friends in New York who work in different industries. And I
Uh-huh.
think what's interesting is, where I'm sitting now, everyone is talking about the startup scene in New York.
Right.
But where I've been for the whole week, no one has been talking about the startup scene in New York. And I think it's interesting to talk about, obviously this is something different from Silicon Valley, but is there a definite advantage to being a one industry town? I mean, is there advantage in being somewhere where everyone is living, breathing startups, where that is the thing driving the economy, that is what everyone is revolving around? Or is it somehow healthier to have a place where New York, where it's like I could tell when I was getting closer to this building because the people on the sidewalk were kind of talking engineer speak, but like I haven't
We're
heard that.
checking in as they were walking along.
Yeah, but it's like I haven't heard any of that anywhere else in New York. I mean, they're using the products like everybody, but in terms of like people who are, talking about apps and talking about what happened late at night and, why this feature wasn't pushed. I mean, the things that you hear all the time in the Valley, I've heard it in this sort of like one neighborhood, but anywhere else. Does it give these companies balance?
Well,
Does it
I have a
that
I have two. I think you're right on both sides. The funny thing is, I've argued both sides of that particular coin. Where one of my issues with Europe's obsession with Silicon Valley, to go back to Europe, is the fact that look, London, for example, cannot be Silicon Valley because London has so many different industries. It doesn't have that sort of critical mass of people who are just all about startups. You can't just like do a lap and have seen everything that's interesting in technology the way you can here. That said, there's a flip side to it, which is that by having the mixture of things, particularly with sort of media crossover companies, so companies like Gawker Media would be, but like in London, companies that are in the advertising space or the fashion space or whatever, there is something wonderful about the fact you in London or in New York, you can walk from one neighborhood. You're in the fashion industry, in another neighborhood you're in the finance, in another industry you're in something else. That I think produces more rounded companies. So I think you can kind of argue it either way, but let's just say New York's never going to become a one industry town, so let's hope that the balance is good.
well, but I don't know. I mean, I think banking. I
Oh yeah,
mean,
sorry. I mean, sorry.
it's a pretty dominant banking town.
I didn't mean that. What I meant was it's not going to be a one industry town for startups. It's not going to be another Silicon Valley. It's
Right.
if it's going to succeed in the startup space, it has to draw on those different companies. I think that's why companies like Gawker are great to come out of it. I don't think Silicon Valley could produce Gawker because I don't think there are enough reporters and writers here who have a sense for popular culture or whatever else. There's the people here are tech writers. Likewise, I don't think. I mean, we've got Mint, I guess, which is out here, but in terms of like a pure financial startup, this is maybe not the town because you can't go and see the banks that readily. It's, so, but it does sound like interesting things are coming. I mean, you mentioned Gawker. I think their redesign they're trying desperately to make themselves irrelevant. But generally speaking, New York's healthy.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, there's healthy and there's healthy. It's better than it's ever been before. But, with the exception of Guild, very few of these guys are making money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very different thing than what we're seeing with Twitter, Zynga, Facebook, Groupon.
Yeah, what are they getting so wrong? Because New York was a town that was all about monetizing content. Like if anyone can figure out monetizing eyeballs, it should be New York. How is it just
the salespeople? I mean, you have more salespeople here. The Valley has a really hard time hiring people who can sell. You shouldn't have that problem here.
So what is it? Is it just the companies are shitty because they don't have the engineers to do anything to generate the eyeballs that then can be sold?
I think it's such a challenge to get engineers. I mean, just being like in Foursquare's office, given the promise of this company and the valuation and the hype, if this was in the Valley, it would be 6 times the size it is.
Because engineers don't want to leave tech hubs. They want to.
Well, I think there's not as many. I think you have people like Google who are hiring up here and throwing really big salaries. I think there's less of a willingness to really take risks. People don't personally know someone who went somewhere and became a millionaire. I mean, I think it's the same things that you have in all of those markets. What they need is a company like Foursquare to actually go the distance and go public and all that. And we aren't seeing that yet. So I think you have to keep in perspective what New York is doing well. But it's taken over Boston as the East Coast hub to get excited about, at least consumer web. That's not a trivial matter,
No. Well, keep us posted, and you'll be back. You'll be back here next week, right?
I'll be back for a day this week, and then gone again, and then back for a few days, and then I will be back in Indonesia for another 2 weeks.
Good Lord. Well, I'll be in LA, I think, this time next week. So I'll.
What are you going to dig up for us in LA?
Well, if you thought it was tough to find startups that are interesting in New York, I think I'm going to go and see your machinima company. They're doing well. I might drop down by MySpace, see if I can pick up some cheap office furniture. Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. So I think.
So anyone watching this that has a hot story we've covered in LA,
tell me about it.
Call paulcarr.com.
I'm there for 5 days. So yeah.
Where are you going?
A friend of mine who we've talked about on TechCrunch before, Michael Acton-Smith from Moshi Monsters, has decided that he's had quite a good year this year. So he's renting a big house, and a few of the cream of London's tech entrepreneurs, all 5 of them, are coming to LA.
Please do not do another London Silicon Valley story. No one cares.
No, I'm not. I'm not there.
They're different places. Move on.
I'm not really there for work. No, I might write a bonus chapter from my previous book about where they all are now. But no, it's going to be LA. What's hot in LA? So apart from the sun, I'm not sure I'm holding out for much hope. But as for startups, prove me wrong, LA. Join us next week.